Hi, welcome back. This chunk lecture is part of the MKT360 Internet and Social Media course. In this video, we will be unpacking how a social media crisis plan should be implemented. As discussed in the study guide, a crisis management plan involves the 4 R's: readiness, radar, response, and recovery. We will carefully consider the response component as it deals with how the crisis response team, actions and plans are activated once the trigger is detected. But first, let's take a look at 2 exemplars of a social media crisis reaction case to see how brands have successfully dealt with online crisis. In this case, a Burger King employee is shown stepping into 2 bowls of lettuce, and that quickly became viral. Soon, it was appearing on local news outlets. Burger King quickly reacted by locating the outlet where this video was shot and identified the employee by his shoes. After locating the culprit, Burger King promptly fired him. At the same time, Burger King's response team had developed a statement and quickly responded to their customers online. They shared how they resolved the crisis and also issued statements to help assure their customers of their zero-tolerance policy against any violations, such as this one in question. More importantly, all this were implemented within 24 hours after the video was uploaded on the web. In this second case, we have DKNY, a New York-based fashion house dealing with a scandal involving photographs. As shown in the slide, an American photographer, Brandon Stanton, had turned down an offer from DKNY's rep for 300 of his photos to be used in their stores. The rep had only offered $15,000 for those photos. However, unknown to the photographer, his photos were actually used in a DKNY store in Bangkok. One of his fans spotted this and sent him the image that you see here. The photographer was understandably unhappy. However, in a post to his Facebook, he demanded that DKNY donate $100,000 to a local charity in his name as way of compensation. DKNY's response team quickly got to work once this news broke. They investigated the situation and found that their Bangkok branch had mistakenly used a proof of concept as their store design. They decided though to offer $25,000 to Mr. Stanton's chosen charity. Once that was decided, the response team quickly posted on their Facebook their apology and explanation behind the mix-up. They also promised the donation of $25,000 as discussed. You can read the full post in this slide. Mr. Stanton in turn responded with an update that he was accepting the apology, and although he was slightly miffed that they only offered $25,000, he did accept the donation. In this case, DKNY took 4 hours to investigate and respond to the crisis. Their quick and strong response successfully diffused the situation before it erupted into something bigger. After reviewing these 2 cases, let's consider what are some of the common characteristics to their response. How does that compare with the response plan that we have laid out in the study guide? Before we answer all these questions, let's just go through in detail the response plan and how that unfolds. The first step of the response plan is assessment. Assessment is in turn a function of the radar, which is the listening and detection system, and the team monitoring the radar. Assuming that this foundation is effective, we need to establish the procedures for evaluating the trigger. As shown in this slide, scenarios may range from very low priority to low to medium, and then to high and critical. Depending on the scenario, the team may have to decide which escalation procedure to activate. In the lower priority cases, customer service teams will be sufficient to deal with the triggers. But when things turn south and escalate from medium to critical, management and even senior executives from the C-suite may have to be also actively involved in the response. In the next step, depending on the scenario, the response team has to start work on preparing the response. Assuming this is a critical scenario, the crisis team has to start investigating the trigger events by gathering information and analyzing the data surrounding the event. For example, DKNY's team probably had to talk to the Bangkok team to understand who and what happened with the photos used in that shopfront. Likewise, Burger King's team had to quickly track down the outlet and talk to the staff to find out who the culprit was. Once the initial information is available, the team has to quickly decide to escalate it to some senior executives or to decide on the appropriate actions to take by themselves. In DKNY's case, someone had to decide whether to compensate the photographer, and if so, how much to compensate. In Burger King's case, the main thing was to decide what to do with the culprit. At the same time, another group of the team had to rated the content for dissemination once the actions and information are compiled. The third step is response. The previous two steps were basically the preparation for this current step. Now, it is time to put it all together. Here, the team has to coordinate the release of the information as well as the content on the respective platforms in a way that ensure maximum impact. This includes proactive and reactive steps to keep the conversation going in a way that solidifies the organization's message. It may also involve cross-linking messages and deciding which conversations to take offline. The FedEx case in this slide is useful in instructing us how to engage with a measured response. Here we have FedEx customer posting a video showing a FedEx driver throwing his computer package into his house. Like the previous cases, FedEx response team worked quickly to locate the customer and the driver. They met up with the customer to make compensation as well as discipline their driver. All these actions were conducted offline. At the same time, the SVP, who is part of the C-suite, released an online video as a response to the customer's post. He apologized in the video for the actions taken and reaffirmed FedEx's motto, as well as assuring that they are using this case as a learning point to remind all their employees. FedEx team worked carefully to post their response on the same platform as the customer's video, while ensuring that all the necessary actions were conducted offline. Once the response has been implemented, the next steps involve evaluating and calibrating. The critical point in this step is for the team to ensure that the information and content is being communicated to the right people. As such, they have to ensure that information gaps are plugged and how and where information is flowing is monitored. At the same time, they need to be sure if their content is fitting to the nuances of the crisis. For example, is the crisis about something that is false or true? If it is intentional on the part of the company or just an accident? At the same time, what are the consumers' perception of the brand? All the information that they release should be fitting to all these nuances. If there are any promises made concerning information to be released, they also need to fulfill it at this phase. Once these issues are evaluated, the team may need to calibrate their messages and platforms. The goal is to make sure that the overall impact of the response matches the impact of the crisis. In other words, the goal is not to over or to underreact. In FedEx's case, their efforts was picked up both by online and offline traditional media. Thus, the response had to also reach the same audience. So back to reviewing the two cases that we saw earlier. We can summarize that Burger King and DKNY were so successful in their response because they had the team and plan in place. As such, when crisis occurs, the team could quickly respond to the problems by evaluating and activating the right escalation. Without the team and plan, it would have been impossible for them to respond in the time frame observed. This is thus the first takeaway. The readiness, which is the team, and the radar form the foundation for the assessment phase. 2. The speed of turnaround is critical. As discussed in previous videos, once a crisis starts, it has to be nipped early. Otherwise, once the crisis becomes viral, the response required will have to be more intensive. Finally, the team and the content has to work closely with the executives to ensure that the response is measured and appropriate to the size of the crisis. They also have to ensure they monitor and calibrate the response to extend the reach to the right stakeholders. With that, we have come to the end of this video about Social Crisis Response Plan. Till the next time, Goodbye.